Everyone in the billionaire's mansion had given up on 8-year-old Evan Blackwood. Doctors had examined him. Therapists had tried everything. Private tutors quit. Nannies lasted less than a week. Every night, Evan woke screaming from the same nightmare, and every morning he refused to speak to anyone. Then a broke young maid named Sofia Bennett arrived at the mansion. On her first night, she heard Evan crying behind a locked bedroom door. Everyone warned her, "Whatever you do, don't go inside." But Sofia opened the door anyway. She sat beside the terrified boy, placed a small silver watch in her hand, and whispered 6 words. "You are safe. You can come back." The next morning, Evan did something that made his billionaire father freeze. For the first time in 3 years, his son spoke, and what Evan said revealed a secret hidden inside that mansion. The Blackwood mansion stood on a hill outside Boston, surrounded by iron gates, stone walls, and perfectly trimmed gardens. Inside lived Alexander Blackwood, a billionaire technology investor whose name appeared regularly in business magazines. He had everything money could buy, except peace. His 8-year-old son, Evan, had changed after his mother died 3 years earlier. Before that night, Evan had been energetic. He loved dinosaurs. He built enormous Lego cities. He followed his father everywhere. Then his mother died unexpectedly after a sudden illness. After the funeral, Evan stopped being the same child. He stopped talking. He stopped eating with the family. He refused to sleep alone. And every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., he woke screaming. Alexander hired specialists from across the country. Nothing worked. One therapist said Evan needed time. Another said he needed medication. A third suggested sending him to a private treatment facility. Alexander refused. "I already lost his mother," he said. "I'm not sending away the only family he has left." But the mansion became a revolving door of professionals, and every one of them eventually left. Then Sofia Bennett arrived. She was 24. She had no prestigious degree, no wealthy family, no connections. She had grown up moving between relatives after losing her own parents when she was young. She needed the job desperately. The Blackwood household offered good pay. But the head housekeeper gave her one warning: stay away from Evan. Sofia frowned. "Why?" The woman lowered her voice. "Because nobody knows what happens when he gets angry." Sofia's first day was strangely quiet. The mansion had 12 bedrooms, 5 living rooms, a private library, and enough staff to run a small hotel. But nobody laughed. Nobody talked loudly. Everyone seemed afraid of disturbing Evan. At dinner, Sofia noticed an empty chair. "Is that Evan's?" The housekeeper nodded. "He doesn't eat downstairs." "Where does he eat?" "In his room. Alone. Always." That night, Sofia was cleaning the hallway when she heard something. A soft thud. Then another, then a frightened voice. "Mom." Sofia stopped. She looked toward Evan's bedroom. The door was locked. Then she heard him scream, "Mom, please." Sofia immediately reached for the door. The housekeeper grabbed her arm. "No." "But he's terrified. You were told to stay away." "He's a child." The housekeeper's eyes filled with sadness. "You don't understand." Another scream came from inside. Sofia pulled her arm away. "I understand enough." She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Evan was sitting on the floor beside his bed. His pajamas were soaked with sweat. His hands were pressed against his ears. His eyes were wide with terror. Sofia didn't rush toward him. She sat on the floor several feet away. "Evan," the boy looked at her, "go away." Sofia nodded. "Okay." She stayed where she was. Evan looked confused. "You're not leaving." "You asked me to go away." "But you're still here. I thought you might change your mind." Evan stared at her. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Sofia noticed something on his nightstand, a small silver pocket watch. She picked it up only after asking permission. "Is this your mother's?" Evan nodded. "She gave it to me." "Do you like listening to it?" He shrugged. Sofia opened the watch. Tick, tick, tick. The sound filled the quiet room. She placed it between them. "Sometimes," she whispered, "when our minds are running too fast, we need something simple to follow." Evan stared at the watch. Tick, tick, tick. His breathing slowly changed. Sofia didn't hypnotize him. She didn't claim to possess magical powers. She simply used a calming visualization technique she had learned years earlier while helping children at a community shelter. "Listen to the ticking," she said. "Imagine you're somewhere safe." Evan closed his eyes. "Where?" "Anywhere." He thought for a moment. "The beach." Sofia smiled. Then we're at the beach. For the first time that night, Evan stopped shaking. At 7. The next morning, Alexander walked into the breakfast room. He expected silence. Instead, Evan was sitting at the table, eating toast. Alexander stopped. The fork slipped slightly from his hand. Evan. The boy looked up. Morning, Dad. Alexander froze. 3 years. His son hadn't voluntarily spoken to him like that in 3 years. Who were you talking to? Evan pointed toward the kitchen. Sofia. Alexander immediately looked at the housekeeper. What happened? Before anyone could answer, Evan spoke again. She helped me sleep. Alexander walked toward Sofia. What did you do? Sofia remained calm. Nothing special. Nothing special. I listened to him. Alexander stared at her. Professional therapists couldn't get him to talk. I didn't ask him to talk. Then what did you do? Sofia looked at Evan. I made him feel like someone was willing to stay. Alexander didn't respond, because that sentence hit harder than any medical report. Over the next week, something remarkable happened. Evan started leaving his room, not often, but enough. He began eating breakfast downstairs. He started drawing again. He even laughed once when Sofia accidentally dropped an entire basket of laundry. The staff couldn't believe it. Alexander watched from a distance. He didn't understand Sofia. She didn't treat Evan like a fragile billionaire's son. She treated him like a normal child. One afternoon, Evan was drawing in the library. Sofia noticed a picture. It showed a large house, a little boy, a woman, and another person standing outside. Sofia pointed toward the figure. Who's that? Evan's smile disappeared. I don't know. Are you sure? He nodded, then he quietly said, he was there that night. Sofia's expression changed. What night? Evan looked toward the hallway. The night Mom died. That evening, Sofia told Alexander about the drawing. He immediately became defensive. What exactly did he say? That someone was there the night his mother died. Alexander's face went pale. Evan was 8 months away from turning 6. He doesn't remember that night. Sofia looked at him carefully. Are you sure? Alexander didn't answer. Sofia continued. He might not remember everything, but children remember feelings. Alexander stared at the drawing. Who could the person be? I don't know. Alexander picked up the picture. Then he noticed something. The figure was wearing a dark suit, and in its hand was something that looked like a phone. Alexander's expression hardened. There was only one person outside the house that night. Who? Our former security director. Where is he now? Alexander looked at her. Dead. Sofia felt a chill. What happened to him? He disappeared 6 months after my wife died. That night, Evan woke again, 2:13 a.m., but this time Sofia was nearby. She sat beside him. Same dream. Evan nodded. Tell me what you see. Mom, what is she doing? She is crying. Why? She's arguing with Dad. Sofia's heart began beating faster. What does she say? Evan covered his ears. I don't know. That's okay. He breathed heavily, then suddenly whispered, Mom says. He stopped. What does she say? She says don't trust him. Sofia froze. Who? Evan opened his eyes. The man outside. Then he pointed toward the window. Sofia turned. A black vehicle was parked beyond the gates, watching the mansion. Security rushed outside. The vehicle disappeared before they could reach it. Alexander ordered the entire estate locked down. Then he questioned Sofia. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I did. You told me Evan drew someone. I didn't know what it meant. Alexander looked exhausted. You've been here 2 weeks, Sofia. How did you get through to him? She hesitated. My younger brother had nightmares. Alexander looked at her. Had. Sofia nodded. He died when he was 10. Silence filled the room. I spent years wishing someone had simply sat beside him instead of telling him to stop being afraid. Alexander lowered his eyes. So that's why you stayed with Evan? Yes. Because of your brother. Partly. She looked toward Evan's bedroom. But mostly because I knew what it felt like when adults decided your fear wasn't important. Alexander said nothing. Then Evan appeared in the doorway. Dad. Alexander turned. Evan held his mother's silver watch. I remember something else. Evan handed the watch to his father. Alexander examined it. There was nothing unusual. Then Evan pointed toward a tiny seam on the back. Mom told me never to open it. Alexander pressed the edge. The back panel clicked open. Inside was a miniature memory card. Alexander's face went completely white. They took it to a computer. The file contained a recording from the night of his wife's death. Alexander played it. His wife's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, something happened to me." Alexander closed his eyes. The recording continued. "I found financial records connecting someone inside the company to an illegal transfer." Sofia looked at Alexander. His wife had discovered someone stealing millions. The recording named the person, Alexander's own chief financial officer, a man he had trusted for 12 years. Then came the final sentence. "Alex, don't trust anyone who tells you Evan is imagining things." The recording ended. Alexander stood motionless. For 3 years, he had believed his wife's death was an accident. Now he realized she had been investigating someone, and that person knew Evan had witnessed something. The FBI was contacted. Financial records were reopened. Security footage was recovered. The former CFO had been using shell companies to steal money from Alexander's businesses. But there was something worse. The night Alexander's wife died, she had confronted him. Evan had been hiding nearby. He had seen the argument. He had seen the man leave, and his terrified young mind had buried the memory. The nightmares weren't random. They were fragments. The CFO had never stopped protecting himself. He had been monitoring the family for years, and now he knew Evan was remembering. That night, the security system detected an intruder. The entire mansion went into lockdown. Alexander grabbed Evan. "Stay behind me." But Sofia stepped forward. "Evan knows the safest room." Evan pointed toward the library. "There's a hidden door." Alexander stared at him. "What?" "My mom showed me." They entered the hidden room behind the library shelves. Security surrounded the mansion. Minutes later, police arrested the former CFO's associate near the property. The man had been sent to retrieve the memory card. But he never found it, because Sofia had already hidden it. The next morning, Alexander sat across from Sofia. For the first time, he wasn't looking at her like an employee. He was looking at her like someone who had changed his family. "You saved my son." Sofia shook her head. "No." "Yes, I didn't save him." She looked toward Evan, who was outside playing basketball with a security guard. "He saved himself." Alexander smiled sadly. "Then you helped him find the way." Sofia nodded. Alexander placed an envelope on the table. "What is that?" "Your salary for the next 10 years. Sofia pushed it back. "No." Alexander stared at her. "Why?" "Because I didn't help Evan for money." "Then what do you want?" Sofia thought for a moment. "I want you to create a place where children like Evan can get help without their parents having to be billionaires." Alexander leaned back. "What kind of place?" "A children's trauma and recovery center." Alexander smiled. "How much would that cost?" Sofia looked at him. "Probably less than the cost of one of your cars." Alexander laughed for the first time in years. Done. Months passed. The Blackwood Foundation opened a new children's recovery center. Sofia was offered a senior position, but she continued working directly with children. Evan continued improving. He still had difficult nights. He still became frightened sometimes. But now he knew what to do. He knew how to breathe, how to ground himself, how to ask for help, and most importantly, he knew someone would stay. One evening, Alexander walked into the living room. He found Evan and Sofia sitting together. Evan was holding the silver watch. Tick, tick, tick. Alexander smiled. Then Evan looked at his father. "Dad." "Yes." "Can Sofia stay forever?" Alexander looked at Sofia. She smiled. "If she wants to." Evan nodded. "I want her to." Alexander's eyes became wet. "Then she stays." 1 year later, Alexander hosted a charity event for the recovery center. Hundreds of guests attended. Doctors, psychologists, business leaders, families, but Sofia stood quietly near the back. Alexander walked onto the stage. "I want everyone to meet someone." Sofia looked surprised. Alexander called her forward. "This woman entered our home as a maid." The room became silent. She had no fortune, no powerful connections, no impressive title, but she gave my son something money couldn't buy. Alexander turned toward Evan. "Courage." The audience applauded. Then Evan walked onto the stage. He took Sofia's hand and said into the microphone, "She didn't heal me because she was special. She healed me because she listened." The room went silent. Then Sofia began crying. Alexander looked at his son and realized the boy who once couldn't say a sentence in front of strangers was now standing before hundreds of people, speaking without fear. Several years later, Evan stood outside the recovery center. He was older, confident, healthy. He still kept his mother's silver watch. Sofia walked beside him. "You still carry that thing?" Evan smiled, "Always." "Why?" "Because it reminds me of your mom." He shook his head. "Of the night everything changed." Sofia smiled. Evan looked at the children entering the center. "Do you remember what you told me?" "What?" "You said you are safe. You can come back." Sofia smiled. "You needed to hear it." Evan looked at her. "No." He shook his head. "I think you needed to hear it too." Sofia's smile disappeared. For a moment, neither spoke, because Evan had understood something she had spent years hiding. She had spent her life helping frightened children because she had once been one herself. The billionaire family had given Sofia a future, but Sofia had given their family something much more valuable. She had reminded them that money can hire the best doctors. It can build the biggest mansion. It can buy the most advanced technology, but it cannot buy the one thing a frightened child needs most: someone who refuses to leave. And that was the real reason the billionaire family adored their maid. She hadn't simply changed Evan's life. She changed the way the entire family understood love.